no offense to people that like talk about like iPad OS being limiting, but in my opinion, it's not iPad OS that's limiting. It's their imaginations and their way of like of wanting it to operate in a way that it's never been intended.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because it's not a Mac. Yes, it can be your next computer, but they didn't say it's your next Mac. That's the difference. Like, that's like saying I want it to operate like Windows because they said it can be your next computer. It's a computing device. So is your iPhone. So is like your Note 20 Ultra. So is your A52. So is your A10e. So is your like any device you make be a computing device. But for me, it's like I don't want it to be Mac OS. No. It can be so much better. And the singular function for me is less distracting because I can't have like 27 things open in little boxes at the same time. I'm not as easily distracted and I can just push those to the side easier. So like Flight Over, you can bring in your music and then like play and then just push it to the side, and then when you need to skip a track or you know, heart a track or, you know, whatever, you can just bring it in and do it again. Same thing like if you were in a FaceTime call like you are with me right now, and like let's say we were working on a project together and you're on your iPad, which I know you're on. I'm for people wondering, I'm on my 12 Pro Max. You know, you can just kind of push that to the side, or you know, it will pop up in like the PIP mode. So, you know, we could be working on a document together, like in a note or like in an Apple like Pages, Numbers, Keynote, whatever, and you know, collaboration that way. And of course with iPad OS 15 you have SharePlay, which brings it a step further. But even on iOS earlier versions, you know, you can just the ability to do that so easily. Where on like your Mac, I feel like you need multiple screens, so you can have like one screen doing one thing and then have like your FaceTime on another.
Yeah.
Or you could, or if you try to split screen it, you have like whatever application is going to be like halfway over their video because it can only go so small.
Yeah.
And so, and then not to even talk about the fact that if you, to grab it and just use it as a tablet on the go, like no Mac has 5G or even LTE built into it. So if you have a cellular model, but not even that, yes, you can, you know, you can hotspot with your iPhone in your pocket. But the fact that I can just split the keyboard off and just hold the screen in my hand, there are a lot of things.
That's really nice.
Signing PDFs, editing thumbnails. Yes, you can get tablets where you can use like a Wacom tablet and like a pressure sensitive. But it is a pain in the butt versus working like physically on top of the image. And so I was a photo major, and so like editing a photo and feeling like you're actually touching it is a completely different experience. And like seeing the quality of it, even with the non-mini LED, you still have that P3 color gamut. You still have like the high color accuracy. You still have most everything that you need as far as like for photo editing. You can edit HDR video clips like in LumaFusion, in iMovie, I think too. And DaVinci Resolve will handle HLG. Like you can shoot 4K 4K HDR footage on your iPhone and bring it into your iPad and know that it's going to work, whether you're using like native iMovie or you grab something like LumaFusion, where if you don't grab the right software, like I don't know that Adobe Premiere Pro can handle that footage yet.
Yeah.
And so like for me, I just know it's going to work. I know it's going to be consistent. I know the experience is going to be balanced there. And I know like I'm not going to have any issues sending footage back and forth. And that gets into an ecosystem thing. But
yeah,
with like the iPad, because things are so similar to using an iPhone or so similar to some of the things with a Mac, to pick it up and just use it's really easy. But you don't even have to be familiar with the devices, and I feel like it's really easy because things just get out of the way like they're supposed to.
I love it. So this perfectly leads into my next question, which is, I feel like a lot of creators are very hesitant to use their iPad Pro as their main device. Like, I feel like they're hesitant to put their Mac or MacBook or whatever, just put it in the drawer, get rid of it, and only use an iPad. Why do you think that a lot of creators, you know, whether they be YouTube creators or anything in general, are hesitant to use the iPad Pro for their main video editing, photo editing device? Do you think it's just a smaller screen, or not enough power, because like these new iPads have M1 in it. They have more RAM, and Apple just increased the RAM limit for some apps. So why do you think people are hesitant to use their iPad versus their Mac?
So I don't think it's processing and hardware based, because even like a 2018 iPad Pro, even with an A12 X processor,
was it the
and
Z?
then that was A12X, and then the A12Z was the 2020. But even earlier than that, and even like the iPad Air with the A14 Bionic, which is it has fewer cores. You're talking about 4-core and then 6-core graphics. So you're talking about half the compute power, or half the compute cores, and 3/4 of the graphics cores. Is plenty powerful enough, and probably, and in some cases, more powerful than the MacBooks that a lot of content creators are using. Because there's, we were seeing the 2019 and 16-inch MacBook Pro being beat out by people with their iPhones and their iPads as far as some of that processing. And mainly it's because, again, it's that single task function. So it's not running like a whole operating system in the back with all those background processes, which then has to be handled by RAM, processor, graphics. It's like it just handles the base of the operating system, which is not that complicated, and then the apps that you have open. And then iOS and iPadOS and macOS has gotten better at this. Like when you launch an application, whatever's in the foreground is prioritized over like what's in the background in a way. Mm-hmm. But if you're exporting a video, macOS will be like, won't shut that off or slow that down and be like, but it will like if you open a Safari tab and start watching a YouTube video, that's going to play pretty fast, and you might notice your export slow down. Where like the iPad, it's kind of whatever's in front of you is what you're working on.
Yeah.
So it's what you're looking at. It doesn't matter like what's behind that. There's no layer of like what's behind that really. And what's crazy is like I opened all 53 apps that are on my iPad at once and like went back through them, and not a single one of them had to like refresh or anything. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And like then started like exporting a video, and then and let that run, and then went through and see. And obviously the export stopped, but I wanted that export to start so it grabs that RAM and stuff, so I could see how it would affect other. Still, like, nothing touched it. And I have the 8 gig model. I'm like, so what's gonna... And from my Mac experience, the same thing. I have the 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gig storage base MacBook Air. What's funny to me is that my iPad technically has a better processor because it's got that 8th GPU core. So for me, I think it's just people are comfortable with what they're used to.
Yep.
And now where I will play devil's advocate a little bit, and I do understand people still using a Mac or even a Windows machine, because I use a PC for streaming just because of ports. Like when I'm on the go, I'll grab like my Razer, and I just got that Samsung, which I'll use now because everything I have can connect with USB-C, or I have an adapter. Just because Sony's been having issues with my Mac using my camera as a webcam. There's been latency issues. But anyways, ports are another thing.
Yeah.
As far as connectivity and some things that you can do, and like I can't connect a microphone and a camera. And then like if I connect my audio interface, I have to use the port out of it for my audio to hear. So I can't have like AirPods Max connected wirelessly and then have a microphone connected and wired, because the operating system doesn't allow Bluetooth audio and it's one or the other sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, most likely if I'm using my high-end, you can't see that, you can just see the shadow. Anyways, if I'm using my high-end microphone, my AKG P120 running into my Scarlett Focusrite audio interface, I'm probably going to use my $300 IEMs, because I want what I hear to be as good as what I put out, so it won't matter in that case. But then there's plugins as far as like on the software side that you just can't, that you don't have access to. And as far as how like iPadOS and iOS works right now, the apps being able to talk between each other, essentially what would happen is developers for plugins would have to make a way that they can be imported into like LumaFusion or GarageBand or whatever audio or video apps that you're using, because as far as I understand, there's no way for Apple won't allow you to be like, I'm going to download an app that's for plugins, and I bring in all my audio and video plugins, and then have that app accessed by LumaFusion or GarageBand to grab those plugins. They have to be native within, where on like your Mac you have the... So for niche, I get it. Painfully Honest Tech, Jason T. Lewis, he's an audio engineer. He can't use his iPad for that because he has certain audio plugins. He couldn't even use an M1 MacBook because some of those plugins weren't ready yet. Niche stuff, I get it. But for like 99.9999999, like everybody else, you can do it. And in my opinion, iPad is almost too much, actually.
Yeah.
Because even an M1 MacBook is quite often too much for what a lot of people need. So like for those people, I say grab like a regular iPad for like, $329 or whatever you can get.
Yeah.
Regular iPad or even iPad minis are pretty good. If you need more than that, you want the newer look. You want something newer that's gonna maybe get some of the newer functions and maybe grab the iPad Air. But like if you're going to be typing a lot and you're going to use the keyboard case, like I said, you're almost better, depending on the deals that you can get, just, getting what you need versus getting, like, beyond what you need. Nobody needs what we have. Like, nobody needs a 12 Pro Max. Nobody needs not really.
We really
the
don't.
Basics. They're way too powerful for the typical, so if you don't need, like, a pen and touch interface and cellular, grab a MacBook Air. Grab like the base MacBook Air if you're going to spend that amount. I did the math on it. So, $999 for the MacBook Air, or this iPad was $899 because I got the 256 gig model. Stack $200 on top of that, so I'm already $100 over. I had the Apple Pencil, but we got to include that, so that's another $130 for the Apple Pencil too.
$129.
So you're $230 over the cost of grabbing the MacBook Air. So you can grab the MacBook Air base model. Actually, you could get the 16 gig model then for that. We're pretty close to that then. But grab the base model. If you need extra storage down the road, for $80 you can get, a 500 gig, pretty fast external SSD. I got a SanDisk one that I use.
Nice.
For backing up for your, but that's the other thing too. So if you're somebody that needs to back up a lot, Time Machine with Mac OS, there's no version of it on your iPad. You don't have I can back up to external storage and then just, but for the most part, I feel like it's just what people are used to. But if you don't have a Mac and you're like looking at things, I think if you're an artist who likes to draw a lot, or you just like taking handwritten notes, and maybe you need the ruggedness of being able to like throw your device in your bag or like carry it outside, and potentially even in the rain, grab an iPad, because you can get a rugged case where literally people have like brought these in the water, swam under the water with these things.
Yep.
You can't really do that with your MacBook.
No.
But apart from that, like if you're a student, even if you're doing some fairly decent video editing, like my whole channel, I do run off from MacBook for the most part, and iPad or iPad. My thing is, like, if you're typing a lot of notes, you're not doing any handwriting, you're not doing any like handwritten art, you're doing photo editing, video editing, typing notes, watching videos. MacBook is really hard to beat right now at that.
So, on that, my wife is using a 11-inch iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard. Both I bought used for her. So the iPad itself came with the pencil, was $700. So that's a fairly decent deal. This is 2018. So it's older, but for what she does, it's still overpowered, right? and then the keyboard case, eBay for $150. All she uses it for is taking notes for when she goes back to school, surfing the web, and then she takes it off. She takes the iPad off the keyboard and plays Clash of Clans. So she uses it as a computer whenever she needs to, and then she uses it as just a bigger version of her phone for entertainment and stuff. And so I can see how I think the iPad is more versatile, where, like you said, you can take it underwater with certain cases. You can take it off the thing and have it as just a bigger version of your phone. And then whenever you need it to be a MacBook or whatever, you can put it on the keyboard and work. And that's why, like, I have my 12.9 inch. It's so much easier for me to do the same thing versus having a actual computer. But I'm also like a techie person, where my wife isn't, and she prefers the iPad just because of the simplicity versus a computer, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I should clarify with what I said before. Basically what I'm saying is, if you're going to buy an iPad, but like 95% of the time you're going to use it like a MacBook, then buy a MacBook.
Yeah.
Unless that 5% of the time really, really, really matters to you. But I'm going to guess that 5% of that 5% of the time where like, oh, but I'd like every once in a while I might separate it. You probably have a smartphone. Just use your smartphone for those like few times of like, or like, because not that you can't, but I feel like nobody should like detach their iPad to use it to shoot their videos.
I hate shooting video with the iPad.
And I guess I would say if you're doing a lot of FaceTime and like Zoom calls and you need really high quality, that might be another time where I might suggest an iPad over a MacBook, because the cameras are still pretty. But again, like, if you have a phone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone, and you're like, I want to get a Mac or an iPad for like Zoom stuff, you can use your phone as a webcam with like free or like an $8 app. So would you rather like save a few $100s on buying a MacBook and then spend like $8 on an app, or would you rather have just like overkill bought? So for me, like, but on the other hand, if like that 5% is like, let's say a month during the summer, you go away and you like stay with family at a cottage somewhere, and it, like you want to be able to grab this thing and like bring it out on the boat for the kids to like watch videos and not worry like if they drop the thing they're gonna break it. You put it in like a rugged water sealed case. If they accidentally drop it in the lake, you can get the thing back out and it's gonna be fine. Then that 5% of the time really matters. Yeah. So it all boils down to like, what are you using it for? Yeah. Just use case, I guess. Partially budget then. Like, if you told me I have $9.99 plus taxes, and this is my use case, like I said, then it's going to be like, well, if you need a keyboard case, an iPad, and an Apple Pencil, then go, save the money, go with the Air. If you aren't gonna notice the 120 hertz, because you're not drawing all the time, or go with the base model of the 11 inch, and you've saved yourself $100, and in total, between there are other alternative keyboard cases that are great out there on Amazon. You can find for like $50-$60. Yep. They might, you're gonna have to use Bluetooth, but they have a decent typing experience and trackpad. And then you can get third-party Apple Pencils if you don't need the pressure sensitivity. If you're just signing PDFs, if you're using it to get close to the edge of, or like masking photos, but you don't need the pressure sensitivity and the angles and stuff. So then, there's that option. You travel somewhere for months during the summer where you rely on cellular because there's no Wi-Fi, and you're not going to use the hotspot from your phone because that's limited as far as like how much hotspot you get, and you don't want to kill your phone. Oh, then really your iPad is your only option. Yeah. And as far as I know, then you got to go with at least the Air, because Does the iPad even have a cellular model?
I don't think it does.
I don't think they do. So then you're like looking at. But then even by the time they probably did, you're probably looking at, because as far as I know, usually in the past when they were doing cellular models on some of these things, you were talking about adding $200, $250. So by the time you do that, you're already up close to like the Air price.
Yep.
And a lot of people are adding, if they're doing cellular, they're doing it on their carrier anyways.
There is.
So that would be the other thing.
There is cellular for the normal iPad. There is cellular.
So that would be the other thing, though. Like, availability, you're probably having a better luck finding, like, the Air or the Pro on your carrier. If you're going to go that way with, like, payment plans and things like that, like monthly payments. And so that's where it gets into it. But for me, because most of the time I'm around Wi-Fi, I'm around home. I have these devices partially because I'm a content creator, partially because I'm a techie, and I became a content creator because I'm a techie, and it allows me to output and talk to the other people who are like-minded, like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And not bore my wife with with all this.
I know your pain.
But I have different purposes for, I use my iPhone. Like, I actually use it as a 12 Pro Max because I shoot in low light. I shoot 4K 60 and I'll crop in. I have shot HDR footage. I use the processing power when I'm exporting, and I don't want to sit there and wait for like an hour for a 8-minute video to export when I can have it do it like in 8 minutes, like live time, or put it over on my iPad. And then for me, I feel like all my devices should be similar in processing and experience as whatever the lowest quality of that. So like if I bought a 12 Pro Max, then I feel like my iPad and my MacBook experience I want to be similar. So I don't want to go out and buy like a lower end iPad, and then all of a sudden now if I've exported to my iPad to get a bigger display but it's functioning slower and things are lagging, it's going to just make me mad. And then if I bought like an older MacBook and it had the same thing, it's just going to make me mad. And then I'm just wasted that money, and then you're going to find me like a week later going to Apple and being like, I want to trade this in and get something new, and I've just lost out whatever I paid and like degrading value, even though Apple products keep their value. But even if it's like $100 on each, it's $200 I lost out. I might as well have just spent to begin. And I don't buy every year. So like, I did go from the 11 Pro Max to the 12 Pro Max, but we changed carriers. But usually I keep an iPhone for 2-3 years, and my Mac I keep for a while. I mean, I still have a 2010 Mac Mini that I fire up every once in a while.
Wow.
And I used that for 8 years or so, until I got the MacBook Air. And, I had the original iPad. And then I got the Air 2 when that came out. And then I ended up with the 9.7-inch Pro. And I didn't upgrade that until the 2018 model came. So it was like every couple of years. But now, with these, and really it was only every 2 years because there was a substantial enough change in between those. But now I feel like we've gotten to the point where I'll be good for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that I won't upgrade between that, because most likely, my hope is, not to pitch my channel, but my hope is that my channel grows enough that I can make the money to be able to do that, so that I can show those changes to the people that are coming to my channel. But in reality, I probably personally would still be using this iPad and this iPhone, even if I got new ones.
Yep.
Because then I'll just use these to record the footage on those, and the new ones would be just literally as products so that I can show them to people, but not because I needed to anymore. Where in the past I was buying... This was before my channel. This is when my channel was starting. I was buying it because it was like, well, my old one's starting to show age.
Yeah.
You know, and there's some upgrade that they brought that personally for me I needed, not for shooting video for my channel, but to capture those photos of, you know, my wife and my son. And
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I was using my 2018 12.9 inch, and with LumaFusion, it was starting to lag, like, really bad. And I don't know what was going on. It was only 4 gigs of RAM. I had the lowest model that you could get. Well, I had 256 gig, but it was 4 gigs of RAM, and I hated it just because of how much lagging it did. Like you said, it started to show its age. So I got this M1, and even though I could have gotten the 2020 model with 6 gigs of RAM, which is probably more than enough for me, I got this M1 to kind of just, like you said, future-proof myself, to where part of me, being the techie, being the little kid at Christmas who wants to get the new iPhone every year and go to the Apple Store and drool over it, I am set with this M1 iPad Pro for the next 10 years or whatever, just because it is very good now. It'll probably still be very good then. Versus if I got the 2020, I would have to upgrade sooner rather than later.
yeah, because unless you bought the highest end model, then they jumped you up to 6 gigs.
Yep.
So I don't. For me, it's like, if you were looking at price, depending on the deals you can find, like the refurbs on the 2018 models are really good, but like 2020 models, there really isn't a lot of that going on, and if it is, it's not a substantial amount of price difference. And then when you look at like comparing the same storage, that changes. And then like essentially with the M1 model, so with the 2020, in order to bump your RAM up, you had to go to that. The 1 terabyte model is the only one that bumped up. Same thing with the new ones, except for when you do that, instead of it being the difference between 4 and 6, it's the difference between 8 and 16. That's a crazy.
Yeah.
But then you don't need to do that, though.
Exactly.
You can go with 256 or 512 or whatever you need, and you still have 8 gigs, which is more than you got with the previous. So it's like, just go with what you need. In reality, this is the first year that like any iPad you buy, basically, for most people, is going to be more than enough of what you, because
that's very true.
The only change in the change in going to the higher storage and higher RAM isn't really going to be noticed by most things, where in the past it might have. And like 8 gigs, 256, like I've had no issues. I can do crazy stuff with it before it even like starts to sweat at all. And the way the iPad handles things is it will just push other apps out of the background, out of the way. And if you put them in the background, well, you're already telling yourself, I don't need that running.
Yep. Yeah, I love my iPad. I love using it for all this.